All right, unmuted and just gonna put the camera on Alita, we should be.
There we go. Turn it right there. Good camera awareness.
You can be my alibi.
All right, I'll call this meeting of the Coventry School Building Committee to order at 6:37 PM. Roll call Kristen Bagley. Kristen Janusis. Ann Dixon,
Here.
Anna Dos Reis Kutu,
Here.
Alita Hall.
Here.
Christine Kennedy. James Pearson.
Here.
Kim Shockley.
Here.
Amy Anzalone. Maya Carreño. Don Cowart.
Here.
Stephen Angel. Russ Hill. Bob Svetti. Dan Perillo.
Here.
Harold Sands. Larry Lima. We'd have a quorum. Emergency evacuation procedures, you can head out the door behind you, or you can come back, go back out the way that you came in the event of an emergency. Approval of the minutes. These are the minutes that were attached to our last agenda. We didn't have a quorum to approve them. I don't know that anyone brought forth any edits last time, but otherwise I'll take a motion to approve the May 17th minutes.
Make a motion to.
We have a
Second.
motion. We have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Does anyone have to take minutes tonight?
Oh, yeah, good point.
Amy's not here, but I'm gonna just take them off the Zoom, because I can't type it right.
Okay.
Just a quick question. I think I know the answer, but I didn't attach the minutes from the last meeting because I don't think last meeting was an official meeting because we didn't have a quorum. And I do have minutes. If you want me to, if they need to be voted on, I could bring them forward.
Okay,
I don't know what the.
yeah,
is on that.
I'll check with legal on that. I'm not sure. Yeah. I mean, honestly, if Amy types something up, it's, better be safe than sorry.
Yeah, so I'll bring those in the next.
Yeah.
We'll double up.
It's good to have a record that there wasn't any before there was before.
Item 4, stage 2 update, Phil.
So, very brief presentation, I'll go ahead and hand out this one sheet. This information is contained in the presentation. I just printed it out for you on one
I
sheet.
am missing.
A trombone playing over there.
Okay, let's go to the next slide, very brief agenda.
Can I get, oh, it's coming out.
Just a couple things, we'll talk about the revised stage 2, the scheduled next step. Next slide. So in this revised stage 2, for those that haven't been with us recently, the scope of work is really focused on healthy school learning environment. And it's going to include select projects that address the air quality, clean water, wastewater system improvements, thermal comfort, facilities for fitness and well-being, life safety improvements, and high impact visual enhancements. So this is much different than what previous applications were. This is where we've landed with the 25 million. Next slide. So this is the breakdown of the 25 million as a percentage. 40% of it is at the high school, 36% of it is at the middle school, followed by 16 at Western, Coventry, and then the remaining schools, all at about 2% of the 25 million. Next slide. This is the breakdown of the 25 billion. 10 million at the high school, 4 million at Western, 500,000 at Washington Oak, Hopkins Hill, Coyote, Black Rock, and 9 million at the middle school, for a total of 25 million. You'll see in the next slide, we start breaking them down by school. This matches what you have in front of you. Each one of these is separate. This is the high school. I think it was important to at least keep everybody in line with recognizing that there are both going to be hard costs and soft costs. And I just used the 80% and 20% for RIDE. So that as you start looking at some of these projects, in mind that there are going to be soft costs. Now, because some of these projects have become smaller, they may be such that although you need to go through the RIDE approval process, you don't need to bring in architects and engineers, don't need to bring in CMs. These are some things that Russ, with some guidance, can manage. Still gonna have to have an OPM, but even then, I would be selective on the OPM that you bring on board, right? Because you don't need to kill a fly with a sledgehammer on this, you know what I mean? The idea is to take this 25 million and spread it out as far as you can within the community and the schools, and actually show something of an impact. So at the high school, we have the gymnasium, we have some science lab work, we have some fitness room work, we have some restroom work, so you're getting grants to do other work like the auditorium. Maybe we should invest in the restrooms outside the auditorium that the public uses. Or invest in the restrooms outside the gymnasium that the public uses. I can tell you $1 million will only get you like a bathroom.
So I guess as you say that, looking at most of this list, it looks really like necessary things and things that are gonna have some splash. The gym, the, say we were doing the theater,
Well, that's coming from some other grant money that you're.
That's happening no matter
but
what.
still, that's like something that's flashy. Based on what we're doing and what our limitations are, is the new entrance vestibule worth $1.8 million out of $10 million?
So I put that on there and as a placeholder. You're gonna end up getting an MOA from Ryan that says Coventry High School, $10 million. At the end, you may end up shifting money between schools. It'll never be broken down by our projects. That's for our internal use.
Right, but that's a big chunk in million
Sure.
that we're kind of placeholding.
Yep.
So is maybe, right, me saying it out loud, that's exactly what we're doing, is saying if things go over, if we have.
If it came in less, you could take, and I put this new entrance vestibule in. This is the first time you're hearing that.
Well, I know
be-
something we talked about.
Because it was something that, like, the high school's not going anywhere,
Right,
right?
no, definitely.
So people would notice that, so maybe that 1.5 can bring us a little bit farther into the lobby. You know what I mean? We will stretch that 1.5 as far as we can. Go to the next slide, I think I just put an example, you talk about flash, getting people excited, you'll need to show stuff like this prior to your bond vote. That may not be 1.5, but we can start going inside the lobby, you know, maybe we'll end up, you know, doing a nice ceiling, and you're coming near any of the auditorium spaces. So that 1.5 is just not this, it could be more.
Makes the vestibule like, you know, like from security, people resistant and all that type of stuff that they're talking.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I've heard that you're already secure, maybe we can be more secure. But certainly that would fall into this scope. of work. So, and that's for more discussion. So that was the high school, for the next one. Western. You know, we want to work on the domestic water, restroom construction and improvements.
I mean, is domestic water related to putting in a new well or just improving the well that's there?
Well, it's a new well.
Is it a new well?
And then there's a lot of other piping that needs to happen other than the well. So if you hear that the well's only gonna cost $100,000 or something like that, there's a lot more plumbing work that needs to happen to facilitate that.
We should have some alternates in terms of needs in the wing for this one. I was just in touch with the town's grant writer to follow up with Reed's office on that. We have a really good chance to get that from Senator Reed was saying, pretty much this project is exactly what they're trying to target. So if we can be ready in terms of specifics with where that 600, almost 700,000 could go instead for Western. I think that would be a good idea. Otherwise, I don't know if that gets shifted to another school. I don't know, but
Well, and again, the MOA is gonna read Western
Yeah.
Coventry 4 million.
Yeah.
The expectation from RIDE when we go in there for projects is that it's something similar to what we.
For
had
our own
submitted,
purposes, yeah.
Not like, hey, we're gonna put a pool in.
Yeah.
So, it's something-
Yeah.
We,
Say yes.
It's a good idea.
The way it dips down, anyway.
You don't want to talk pools right now. If you see Bud Long pool discussions. Hanson.
Or Gladstone Street.
Yeah, God.
Tony's doing a good job. on
next
that.
slide. Washington Oak. So here we get into the $500,000 placeholder. Now, it will not take long to spend $500,000. That's why, Russ needs to manage a lot of this work through small contracts. Hire the, follows the procedures for procurement, but you don't need to get other people involved in managing some of this work, replacing a rooftop unit, paving an area, painting the school, things like that. And we always have this miscellaneous improvement bucket that gives us the opportunity to add other scopes or something like that.
So I have a question for you. I understand that we're trying to do things that add a lot of value, and academically, there's not a whole lot of academic improvements here.
Correct.
Or infrastructure. When I went by Western Coventry, well, many times during the daytime, and none of these schools have any kind of uniform signage, landscaping. I mean, Western Coventry looks very old and drab at this point in time. In some way, it would be nice if we could find some money. And I'm not sure how much it would cost, but some money to make these schools look like there's some care being given to them. Know what I mean? Maybe it's uniform names, like I saw Coventry High School above that vestibule. And I mean, it strikes you, this is an important school, this is the name of the school. We don't have that in all these other schools. The landscaping is very poor. Things need to be done to just improve the type and appearance of what we have here. So what can we do, and where can we find this money to do something?
So I could tell you from a ride standpoint,
Yes.
you would be covered, right? We have this line item called site improvement. Well, signage is a site improvement, so.
Okay, we can do something.
So I can get you reimbursed for it. If you decide to prioritize that, then that's a discussion this committee can have.
Okay,
We don't need to decide that today.
correct.
I'm just giving you a pathway to getting reimbursed for stuff like that.
So this is a pathway that may allow us to have some uniform signage, some improvements in the landscaping, the appearance of the schools.
If that's what the committee wants to prioritize, yeah. So Washington Oak, go ahead to, the next one, Hopkins Hill, they're very similar, just the HVAC improvements are more mechanical piping oriented at the 3 elementary schools. As opposed to Washington Oak, which they are even associated. For those who weren't here, Russ had commented last time that they've had close to catastrophic failures of the piping, the elementary schools, and they wanted to fix that. And again, that site improvement line item can be prioritized to signage. Tyoke is the same as Hopkins Hill, and Black Rock is the same as the other two. The last is middle school at 9 million, and what we've targeted here is gymnasium improvements, restroom improvements, HVAC improvements, the miscellaneous improvements, a big one. Partial roof replacement. And then, again, site improvements. We know that there was an issue with the retaining wall in front of the middle school. And we want to make sure you've got money allocated towards those types of initiatives. And again, you'll get the MOA, it'll just say, the middle school, 9 million. And it needs to generally align with what we've identified here. The next slide shows,
Just ask quick, I know it's just placeholders, but what does $600,000 buy you at that middle school for giving it sidewalks? Just for curiosity, like, I'm not looking for.
well, we'll certainly be able to take care of that retaining wall. I don't know. You on the spot, and you certainly could all.
I mean, the answer is really not much, right? If you're gonna have to do some demo and you're not, you're gonna have to take out stuff, but that area in the back of the park. the Basketball games, you could probably get that and some site stuff and then, they'll be paid and straight anything else. But it wouldn't, not super bad. You can do something.
I thought it would go pretty far because The quote we have for the Payne Community Center lot is what, like 37-38?
So, but
Yeah.
that's how you're gonna have to manage this, and I don't wanna keep putting it
Yeah.
on Russ since he's not here, but. You know, breaking it up into these small pieces where you don't have that much.
Mhm.
That much behind it, like you. Russ may be able to find a smaller paving contractor off the MPA. As opposed to somebody
Yeah.
that we typically would recommend, not that they would do a bad job, it's just not who we typically work with on a much larger scale project.
Is this, whatever happened with like the moisture mitigation of floor, we did it for last year, the permanent solution building, or is it just still?
Yeah, so what we did, which really worked miracles, is Russ put industrial side dehumidifiers in the crawl space, because there's a crawl space under the building. And he had been in another district where they had moisture coming up from underneath. And so he put a dehumidifier in there. They were pulling out, I don't know how many hundreds of gallons of water, but all of the seepage that had seemed to be coming up through the floor stopped. Like last year, there were rooms that had to be stripped and redone 2 or 3 times because it was coming up through the floor tiles. So that's one part of it. I think the roof is part 2 of that project, because there's 2 roofs. There's the old one and the new one. And the new one, by the way, is the one that needs to be replaced. That's the one that's all cracking, but we know that moisture is getting in between the 2 roofs and then finding ways into the building, and we think that creates moisture as well. So if we can address the roof and the floor, and then the rest of it maybe through HVAC, I think we're gonna be able to kind of nail that down.
John, I'd like to ask you a question. Most of this is infrastructure, and I understand the importance of maintaining that infrastructure. But is there anything from an academic point of view that we could be doing with this limited money that we have? I mean, so is that, gym, we got some improvements to the gym, science labs, et cetera. Is there anything else that we could put into this that says we're gonna get at least a little bit of academic push with this grant?
Yeah, we could. I will say how this came to be is we have a very long capital improvement list,
Right,
very long, multiple pages,
Right.
and most of the things are listed as critical.
Right.
And so when Russ and I sat down with Bill, and we went through that list, we thought the best way to spend the limited funds we have is to address the capital improvements that haven't been addressed
right.
in years. So sure, there's not a lot of academics on here, but the crucial issues that we're having are really more capital improvement things than they are anything else. A typical classroom in the middle school is not new and shiny, but it's functional. But when you walk around the outside of the building and the retaining wall is literally being held up by a piece of metal screwed in because the bricks are falling onto the ground, that's a little bit more dire. So I think our goal here was, and this is why Phil framed it at the beginning as being sort of a healthy learning environment, is how do we improve the health and fitness of the buildings?
Right.
You know, we fix a roof, we fix the sprinklers, we fix the water, we fix the sanitation, we fix wastewater, all the things that we're struggling with. And that will make the whole learning environment better, but may not, put new furniture in a room or, a new, projection system or something like that.
I completely agree with that philosophy, but somehow we need to put on our thinking caps and be very creative, because we're going out and asking people to approve a bond. And even though it's really sized down from what we really would like to do. I mean, what is the carrot, or what's gonna be the selling point to get people excited about this? We got a gym here, we've got a fitness center, we've got.
I'm gonna tell you, man, I think the things on this list are gonna excite people more than education.
I don't know, I mean, I'd like to see a little more mix there.
So I don't disagree, but I do think. This is the beginning of a long plan for college, so. This first step may not be as glamorous as we want it to be, but it certainly starts you on the right path. But to sell this bond, can you go to the next slide? Sell this bond, you're gonna need to show images like this,
Yes.
like the gym at the middle school,
Right.
what it could be. So. I think that's how you're gonna get excitement. It won't be about academics, it'll be about.
And the auditorium really is gonna be from grant money, not from this referendum,
Mhm.
correct?
But it doesn't mean we couldn't promote that project as, this is what nice things look like.
Yeah.
This is how we make our community better for the entire community. Now, not only the kids in the school, the kids that will be in that school, but everybody. You know, whether we have a town council meeting there, or somebody does a performance there, whether it's an in-school performance, or out-of-school performance, it's gonna be the kind of place where people go in and say, wow, this is great. Same thing with the gyms. Those are the places where people are gonna be like, this is what nice things looks like. So when we do the next project, if it's a bigger project, people will be like now motivated because they've had a little taste of what nice things look like. I don't know what's East Providence for, and I don't want to speak for you, but she went to East Providence for a conference, and one of the first things she texted me is, this is a beautiful school. You know, first impressions right away, it's a beautiful school.
I mean,
Good
the
job,
thing,
Leah.
I mean, the thing too is that as much as education is obviously quite important, but it's like your home, right? If your home is kept up, it's clean, it's got a good visual, you feel good. Everything else afterwards comes next, because you feel like, all right, I'm in a good space, then it transcends where kids actually will perform better because they feel better about their environment. And then you can capitalize on whatever education, but I get the point that if
You will educate us and you don't understand.
Yeah.
You don't understand the part of the other stuff, but absolutely. But I'm also thinking in terms of valuing people around this project plus other projects that we want to come up with.
I think clear that we're putting short money into long-term buildings. You know, we're putting money into buildings we plan on continuing to improve on over time. We don't plan on throwing money into a building that we plan on taking.
Divestment, yeah. Next slide. So, this is where we're just talking about schedule. The submission is due September 15th, so we'll need to make a school building committee recommendation prior to school committee approval. You do have a school committee meeting on August 24th. It does also need to be approved by town council. It doesn't matter which one happens first. There is a town council meeting on August 22nd. So those could be it's up to you. Those could be the dates that you would officially vote. We submit on September 15th. Next slide. So if you're familiar, stage 2 includes these 10 categories. We've gone through this before. Next slide. If you want something in your hands before you vote, we typically send out this part 1, which is just the project summary and prioritization, which includes the commentary on these, 6 or 7 topics. That's typically what we have submitted for people to review before they vote, right? Everybody says, well, we need to see something other than one piece of paper. That's typically what we provide. So we're not ready to provide this yet. We need to generate this based on this, assuming there's no major deviations from this. So I think that's it. Next slide. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Any comments, discussion?
I think the improvements that we're making to buildings that we're keeping and portions of buildings that we're keeping are a good idea. I think we're also touching parts of the buildings that are seen by the most people. I think if we can find other ways like grants to go along with things over the course of the next few months. I can't figure out how to get in and out of high school. Like, I can't believe seniors drive there, like just hit each other. So, better lines, better just overall functionality of the middle school and high school parking lots. And I can't say for the other elementary schools because I don't recall, but like just making more functional parking lots, I think.
Every one of them is on the list for paving. Every one of them.
Mhm.
And the way we broke it out was,
Yeah, I saw that.
we couldn't do it all in 1 year, so in our capital improvement, we're like 50 grand a year for the next 5 or 6 years, we'll be able to get paving done everywhere. This might be able to accelerate that a little bit.
And I think I will add the word site improvements to the entrance vestibule line item. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Because it does, you can say at some point, again, I'm just one of those people in this, I'm biased, like, I can deserve it, like, all these other towns, building them with schools. So at some point, they do need to like find that But I think that this kind of helped in that process, right? So then hopefully next time, we're not saying, right, like put 10 million for the middle school, but 5 million, we gotta keep up.
The hope is this softens the public to
Yeah.
understand, yeah.
And then it's not 80 million, it's not worried about a new school plus touching
Yep.
everything else, so maybe. Kind of bridge the gap, so I think that this does a good job of what we're doing. Yeah.
I think the timeline might be nice for people to know too, like
Mm.
the larger project is gonna take us X amount of years. This one we're gonna get done. Whenever we think it might be able to be done. So it's gonna touch your kids. You know, most likely your kids are gonna get to enjoy this.
That's what I heard a lot from people about the combined school was, oh, my kid's never gonna see it. It's like, but, you know, that'll happen whenever we do it, so, but.
Your approval will be good for 5 years. If you're successful with the bond vote and how you want to structure the bond and how you want to draw down and what projects you may want to move forward, that's all going to be a discussion.
So, at this time, I wanted to get a temperature from the committee. We can either vote to confirm the scope of work we have in front of us to recommend it to the school committee. Or we can wait till a later meeting, maybe it's end of July or early August. If there's a more feedback you wanted to give, or you wanted to think about this more. Just keep in mind that the general scope of work needs to be included in the ballot language, which needs to be approved by the town council before August 15th. So the sooner we can make this recommendation, the better. You have to give a general detail of the scope of work in the ballot language, so when people go to the polls, they're reading it and they can get a sense generally of what the money's gonna go to.
Next school committee meeting toward the end of July, so I would be in favor of moving this forward now.
I agree.
I agree with you too. It's time.
We have time to include it on our July 6th agenda too, if we wanted to. Well, yeah,
That's why I was getting.
it's in favor of a recess, a month long, so. So do I hear a motion from the committee to approve the scope of work for the stage 2 application?
I make a motion to approve the station.
Motion, do I have a second?
I second.
Do we have a second? Any discussion?
I would just say that, Western is the only one that doesn't necessarily say site improvements, so if we can just, with the caveat, if everybody has to approve it.
Yep.
Something that's a site improvement or a shift, so that it's clear that. Is that matters to.
Yeah.
Would miscellaneous improvement also have some kind of site?
Yeah. I mean,
Could be whatever you want.
It could be whatever you want, but it would probably be appropriate to make sure site improvement is on every.
Wow, I saw that. I was going for Alita.
Yeah.
Any other discussion?
Well, if we're going to include site improvements, do we want to specify paving and sidewalks under the middle school or just leave it generic site improvements?
I think he has.
It says paving and sidewalks.
I'd say let's be specific with that.
Not all of it,
They all say paving and sidewalks.
but you want to have that for Western coverage, you say that too?
Or do we leave it vague so that potentially there's signage?
So you're right, yeah, right.
I would leave it miscellaneous.
Yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion? We'll do a roll call for this one. Ann Dixon,
Yes.
Anna Dos Reis Kutu,
Yes.
Alita Hall,
Yes.
James Pearson.
Aye.
Kim Shockley,
Yes.
Hillary Lima, aye. 6 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, the motion passes. So we'll try and get this on the July 6th agenda for the council. And James, you are July, what'd you say, 27th? Okay,
So I think for those, then you want to leave the scope of work tag out of the motion. Because of those, I'm assuming, unless you're doing this in 2 rounds. So,
We already approved the amount.
yeah,
So
you
all we
already
have to approve now
approved the
is that,
amount,
right?
so what we'll need is an approval to submit the stage two.
Okay,
Okay,
So,
so with that being said, I'll seek a motion to for approval to submit, or for approval for recommendation to the town council or and school committee to submit the stage 2 application.
make a motion.
Any discussion? Roll call. Ann Dixon,
Yes.
Anna Dos Reis Kutu,
Yes.
Alita Hall,
Yes.
James Pearson.
Aye.
Kim Shockley,
Yes.
Larry Lima, I. 6 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. Okay, is that all you need?
that's it, you got to do.
Will you be doing presentations at those 2 meetings?
Sounds like it. So.
I think this one would just be as involved as.
Yeah.
We've heard all this.
Maybe it's this brief one that we just
Yeah.
went through.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, we all have seen the issues with the schools over 2 years of working on these projects.
This is very reasonable.
Yeah, and that's fine. So
Yeah,
this is
it's-
July 6th.
I think you're touching as many students as humanly possible with the money. we have.
And chipping away at a long Dead Sea Scrolls capital list. Dave, before we move on from this, is there anything else, any other clarity or things you need for the ballot language at all?
Good on the ballot, makers. I'd like to get the council or at least people here or someone an early draft. And that
The warrant, okay.
And so normally, there are 2 ways to do this. But, first of all, Bill, when you say 5 years, and I know it's 5 years, when is that gonna remind me, when is that gonna run from? Their approval?
From their
on or
approval
about
in December. Yep.
15th? Okay, so that gives me an end date that the project's estimated timetable that we're required to say in the ad by state law is from June 30th, 2024 to December 15th. You can change this.
29.
2028,
Oh, from this year, okay.
unless you want to shorten. it. There's
My
no great reason to.
Well, the only reason to shorten it to the June 30th of that year.
Of the prior year.
Of the, well, no, of that year, instead of December 15th, 2028. Make it June 30th, 2028, because that you need, you can submit for housing aid.
Yep, okay.
And, you really don't gain anything. By wait.
Well, it's just that if it was delayed. you know,
If something got delayed, yeah,
You know, the. I've done a lot of renovation projects or I've not done, well, I've financed, done the bonds for them and I've seen running into a chainsaw of all sorts of crazy stuff. I mean, maybe that was COVID related, but. So the other thing is I generally combine the hard and the soft.
Yeah.
Because we know what the limit is, 20%, and if you don't spend it, you want to spend it on hard. and-
Yep.
And sometimes that has a shock effect with the soft, and you're just using 20% anyway. And, the next thing is I've done it 2 ways. I've either said how much at each school and listed all your line items. I'm kind of reticent of doing a breakdown of each line item because every time I've done it, we've never hit the number
no, I
exactly.
completely agree. That
And-
you want
And could
it
you
as vague as possible.
Right, I mean, you know this and I know this, but, and this is something you need for your memorandum of agreement with RIDE. So, hear me out. So I have an election on October, I can never remember the date. or
Third.
fourth.
Third,
So we need to advertise, cause the Board of Canvassers to advertise it sometime in September, clearly before the 15th. You will not have the MOA submitted by then, but you will have it finalized by August 22nd or 24th. So we'll just need to know, have that all lined up and everybody okay with it. And for August and have it, you know, the first publication or set whatever the council, whatever the Board of Canvassers does, I think we can, you know, push them. If you want 1 ad, 2 ads, local papers, Patuxent Valley Daily.
Kent County.
Kent County Daily Times.
Is that good, wide enough circulation?
Yeah, because Kent County Daily Times also publishes, it's IRI Central, they'll publish Coventry Courier to the smaller one in their catchment.
So some towns have got help to mail this out to all the voters. Is that something you do in Coventry or?
I'll check the money tree out front.
Beer.
I mean,
How much was the townwide, how much was the townwide mailing about the budget vote last year? That it was like 15 or 20,
Oh, really?
yeah,
I thought it was.
15 to 20K.
That doesn't make, just, I guess it's cheaper to mail things around Jamestown. I don't know.
Yeah.
But just,
No one lives in Jason.
Well,
It's a very small population.
well, yeah.
And they don't.
But yes. but we have,
For votes,
you know,
yeah.
we have mails and mailboxes.
Well, you do, you have a much smaller population.
Permanent,
So it
permanent
was
residents, yeah.
To mail things in Jason.
Well, still, there was 5 million
Especially
bonds, so
residential.
they get on
Yeah.
one, and they only have one school, one or two.
We have to use it, there's, last I knew,
Do
there's
not
like
have to mail it.
two versions of
Make
Code
it-
Red. There's one that has to be emergency only. And then we also have that other system, and we have to pay each time we do one, but it's not a lot of money.
Might be worth it to email it.
I think that.
The Code
Yeah,
Red's
Code
the
Red.
same.
That, everybody's in there, right?
If they
Well,
signed
not
up-
everybody,
they
you have to be
for it.
signed up,
Yes.
but it's a good amount in there.
They called me the other night at 1:30 to let me know what my brainstorm. That's like great.
So the last thing, and this is for the financial review. is The finance director and the financial advisor will need to determine to what degree they're going to need to use bond anticipation notes. That's, which means like take out 1-year notes before we issue the bonds. That's no longer a giveaway, because the rate. on
I just
your
wanna be,
note is
I wanna
more
be
than
careful
bonds.
because we don't have financials on here. So we can add it to the next agenda. I just don't wanna get into OMA violation.
Okay,
going into that.
But I only reference why I need what I need is. They will want more, actual timetable. A realistic timetable to work out the projections. But that, I don't need that tomorrow afternoon. I need, and it's flexible and we can just wing it, but it's something people want to know. When we were talking about construction of a new school, which you know is going to take 3 years, that's a totally different thing. This could be done in clumps. You know, you borrow in April and spend by, most of the work is summer kind of. And you have, you know, your natural construction cycle starts in the spring and it's by more or less when school opens, water maybe. And so you have, you know, if it was 3 of those or 2 of those, I just don't know what, and then lastly, as you know, we'll need the, you know, just some sort of generic, if there's anything in there that doesn't really have a useful life, I mean, that doesn't last 10 or 15 or 20 years, we just need to figure that out, but everything here seemed to be okay. I think using generically on every place site improvements and miscellaneous is a good idea, because if you have extra money and want to be clear that you can spend it on that, and council where the ad would say, you know, all contracts awarded by the council, if something wasn't done on the list or wasn't approved by right on the list, we could move on to something else. This is just, it's a working draft, so to speak. It's gonna be, but it's district wide amongst many of this, all the schools, but focus, you know, it's gonna be clear that there's gonna be more on middle school and the high school than some of the other elementary. If that's okay, with the council,
All right,
but I'm good for now.
excellent. That's what I like to hear.
Is it also possible to develop a list of, the amount of grants you're anticipating and what improvements can be made in the schools? Because I think it would be good for people to understand that we're going for a bond for X, Y, Z. but we're also going to be using grants to do ABC. Because people didn't stop to think about this total package of school improvements, I think it would be very helpful.
It's like you're reading my mind, because one of the things I had brought up at school committee that I didn't mention to this committee was there was a well, WELL, not well like in the ground, but I think a wellness grant, but essentially it was for furniture. And it's through WB Mason, the Department of Ed. There was no application process. They basically said, Coventry, you get X amount of dollars. Here's what you can order, go order it. And we did, and we got it. So we have $250,000 worth of furniture going into all 7 schools. It's not gonna outfit the entire classrooms, but there are things that are gonna go into media centers and some of our specialized classrooms that will benefit kids in their learning environment. That's an example, I think, of things that I could tell people that are happening. We're chasing everything in, like anything that comes along, I go after.
No, I understand, but I mean, if there was some kind of a list or.
Yeah,
table
I think you're right.
I think disseminating them
Mhm.
among people, and then you can use it for news articles, et cetera.
Correct.
So in other words, if we're not just getting the money from the people,
Mhm.
we're also getting other sources.
Other out-
These are the
yeah.
things we're gonna be able to do.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Any other discussion? All right. Marketing strategy.
So just a short update. So I talked to some folks from different schools that were interested in being part of that parent group. And I think now that I know where we're going and what we're gonna do, we're gonna pull together. I also have a few names of people who could potentially be consultants and provide us some professional support in this area. So what we'll do is we'll have those folks meet with the parent group, and maybe we can, come up with some sort of arrangement so that we can fundraise, get enough money to hire a consultant to then promote this project appropriately. But what we went through tonight and voted on is gonna make that next meeting like really fruitful. So what I'm hoping happens, and I know we're not on that agenda item yet, but when we start talking about when the next meeting is, I wouldn't mind having a few weeks between now and when that next meeting is, so I can schedule 1 or 2 meetings with the marketing.
Yeah, I'd prefer this group meets before we convene again this
Yeah.
group. Yeah.
So I'm gonna try to get that. Next week's a tough week,
Oh, yeah.
but the week after that, I'm gonna try to see if I can get something done.
What's the size of that group at this point?
So right now I have about a half a dozen of people. Some of them may say, yes, I'm still in, some may not. I kind of started the conversation back when we were doing a different project. But some of the folks like Amanda from Tyo, some of the other folks are still interested in being part of it. I'm also hoping, not to put anybody on the spot, but I'm also hoping that folks who have been part of the building committee can either say, we'll help out, or recommend other parents that they know of, because I wouldn't mind have representation from all 7 schools. Because I think it's a district-wide.
Is there a forum where you can put out an open call?
I
Like
can
if you're-
definitely do
If you're
that.
interested in,
Amanda Olay and Amanda Aldana are both.
Yeah.
and
Mrs.
Ama- and
Aldana,
Amanda
yes,
Carlo.
Yeah. So what I'll do, I can put an email out to some folks that I know, but I can also put something out on the list.
Yeah.
I know Cranston, the group was fairly tight. It wasn't like a,
Oh, yeah, you don't want a
15
ton of
people.
cooks in the kitchen. Yeah,
Tom No Ray said he would help out as well.
Yeah.
Yes, so
okay,
that will help.
all right. Just keep us posted, and then the only thing I caution with this group is you can let the school building committee know, but we should be careful about how many voting members come, because then we have to list
Post
it.
it.
Yep. Okay, any discussion on that item? Public comment? Brad? Anything you'd like to share with the class? Okay. All right. Going once, going twice. We don't have it on here, but scheduling our next meeting, I think we wait till either like the last week in July or first week in August for this group to meet again.
Like August 2nd, second.
No, I think that gives you enough time to meet with your parent group. And that is also after the stage 2 votes.
Are we gonna go on that?
That's the plan. Get that out of the way.
Did you say the second time?
I did, August 2nd.
What's the probability we could have ballot language ready to vote on next week?
I circulated this morning about language.
Okay,
Actually, I just circulated it last week. to the manager, finance director.
We don't have to rush it next week, but August 8th will be really tight. If you go
I have,
running up against August 15th.
That's valid.
All right, I'll take a look at this.
I gotta take off.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, good night.
So August 2nd for our next meeting. At 6:30 PM.
Is there a meeting of the board of canvassers?
They meet on an as needed basis, so I don't think they have a regular meeting schedule, so they'll have to set it. Whenever the council,
So that is verbatim. Good question,
okay,
authorized by the General Assembly.
do you anticipate any changes to this based on what you've heard here tonight?
And it's. You know, my client's 50-50. Does the council ever act on the question? No. Just, it goes both ways. The only, this was a good choice. It is.
Well, let me
it is a
adjourn the
one-question-
meeting and we'll chat 1 second.
It's a one question ballot.
If there's no other public comment, August 2nd, 6:30, do you have a motion to adjourn at 7:22 PM? Motion, do I have a second? All those in favor? Any opposed? The ayes have it. We stand adjourned. So yeah, I'm nervous.